Hello everyone, welcome to Unit 2, Research Project Plan. I'm Phạm Thị Minh Trang and will help you to go through Unit 2. First, I want you to start with a very small warming up activities. Can you imagine that you need to plan a trip to Europe? You can see there are a lot of destinations here. Can you decide some steps to plan a trip for me? So here's some suggested answers you can have in your mind. First, you can choose a destination. For example, you choose to visit Paris. You need to set a travel time, set a budget. You also need to research your destinations. You need to compare and contrast the travel reviews and advice. You also make plans with transportation, accommodation, or meals. And then you need to revise the plan after traveling. So I want you to imagine that the basic concept of planning and organizing a research paper actually the same as when you plan a trip to Europe. So let's see what we have for today. So after this lesson, I hope that everybody can identify the objectives and aims of research. You also learn how to apply learned knowledge about research approach to choose a suitable research topic, and you need to write research questions for a particular topic. So to meet the objectives, I divide my unit into two main parts. First one, we need to together learn how to select a suitable topic for research, and then how can we identify the objectives and research questions? So to find a topic, you need to go through three things: brainstorming, concept map, and funneling. First one is brainstorming. So brainstorming means that the researcher should be flexible in conceptualizations of the research problem being investigated, and they should begin with a very broad idea, and then they should narrow it down. So I give you one advice for brainstorming. You can actually brainstorm by yourself, but you should also brainstorm it with a small group, because normally you can actually come up with a lot of ideas if you work with other people. So you can start working in group like this. You can start by writing down all the broad topic and choose only one. You write down as many words or key terms associated with that topic, and then everybody need to think about this topic. And then with the words that you written down, you can add some new idea related to the words. At last, you will end up with a page or a blackboard or a sheet of paper filling with words. And the purpose of brainstorming, remember, is to get the idea flowing. And I hope that you can, with all the words you write down there, you can have some ideas in your mind. So to make the brainstorming work, there are some following rules that you need to follow. Rule number 1, don't judge. Treat all ideas useful. Number 2, don't be inhibited. Think widely. Do not just narrow down into one aspect of the big topic. Rule number 3, you need to use the ideas of others to create new ideas. Rule number 4, quantitative, not qualitative, is important. So it means that you need to think of as many ideas as possible. And last one, have fun. Research doesn't have to be boring, and it must be something that you really want to research about. So here are some of the broad topics that I have in my mind. For example, you can think about something to do with mature students, adult students, stress at work, or the effectiveness of research methods to use in the social media, in research, in the library. Or you can say about the supervisions of research project, the questioning in classroom, or how to start up a business, or the role of social media in reporting the news. So after you have all the ideas that you have in your mind, remember to think about the research objective. So the research objective must be something that consists of brainstorming, concept map, and discussing with other ideas, and also funneling. And you also need to give your own ideas so that you have the thing called the research objectives. Moving on to the second one, after you're done with the brainstorming, you can come with the concept map. So the concept map is the next stage. And what you need to do is first write down all the keywords or terms associated with the topic. You sort out these words or terms into logical groups, and you can map the result of the step A and step B. So actually, concept map help you to organize ideas and see how they relate to each other. You can do them by yourself, or you can do it with other friends. Now I give you one example of one topic. So the broad topic I can think of is netball training. So when I come up with this topic, I put some of the words into the group like this. I got 4 groups here: injury, skill, fitness, and coaching. For example, considering about netball training in terms of injury, I think about echoes, the knees, and the warm-ups. About the skill, if I want to research about netball training, I need to think about some skill. For example, positioning, shooting, passing, or drilling. And for coaching, I can think about the one who conduct the training, and I think about the time, which is night time, the discipline, meaning the rules if you want to deliver coaching to other people or the organization. So this one is a concept map for the netball training. Funneling is actually the final step in the developing your idea objective. So funnel look like this, and you need to start all the idea with the broad and gradually narrow it down. In qualitative interviews and usable tests, you also need to start with broad and exploratory questions or tasks, and then you can generate a lot of ideas. So just remember that funneling, it means that you're moving from broad to narrow, or general to specific. If you look at the netball concept map, there will be at least 4 potential research areas you can look at: injury, coaching, fitness, and skill. And each of these concepts you can actually generate into a large number of research topics or objectives. So you can see that in the slide, it is an example of concept and how can you come up with the objectives. So concept is injuries. You can actually do a research to identify the major causes and types of netball injury. For coaching, you can actually try to conduct a research to compare and contrast the different coaching methods of 4 netball coaches. For fitness, you can do an assessment of the training programs and fitness level of the 2 netball teams. And for the skill, you can investigate the effectiveness of individual skill training as opposed to overall teams and positioning training. So how can we do it? For you can first start with selecting a topic that you love. So for me, I want to learn about the process, and then you also need to think about the topic that makes you less likely to lose motivation, because you know that for one research, you need to conduct the research for roughly 3 or even 6 months. So it lasts for a very, very long time. So choose something that you love. Next, you need to choose a topic with a feasible focus. Feasible here meaning applicable or practical. So you need to keep the focus clear and define it. And you also think something big as education, and then you can narrow it down. And as I say, for funneling, you should start with the general idea, review all the literature, and refine your problems based on what you have found in the literature. So, for example, I will show you how I funneling my topic. I start with education. And then, because I'm an English teacher, so I love to look at language teaching and learning. I love to look at the writing skill, so I look at English writing skill. And in writing skill, there's a lot of aspects. And I really want to look at the aspect of anxiety of Vietnamese students, and then when they write their English essay. So I come up with a topic called Writing Anxiety of Vietnamese Students when composing an English essay. So that's the way we can do funneling. I really want you to watch a video about how to develop a good research topic.
In this video, you will learn how to develop a good research topic. To start out, let's first answer the question why it's important to know how to develop a good research topic. Think of it this way. During your time as a student, and perhaps even later, you will probably write a good number of research papers. While some instructors might provide you with a list of research topics to choose from, others might not. You will have to choose your own topic. So, what can you write about? Well, let's first answer the question, what makes a topic really good? 3 things worth to mention here. First, it's a topic that strongly interests you. This is very important. Make sure that the topic you pick, the topic you will write about, is a topic that interests you, fascinates you, that you want to talk about. Really, there's nothing worse than spending a lot of time writing about a topic that bores you. Second, make sure your topic is creative. What do we mean by that? Well, there are some topics that have just been written about over and over and over again. Can you come up with a topic that perhaps hasn't been covered that much? Try to pick something that is creative and exciting to you and your peers. Writing about Shakespeare's dramas is great, but that topic in itself has been covered extensively. So try to find something that might be a little more creative than that. And third, speaking of Shakespeare's dramas, make sure you pick something that is not too broad. Look at your assignment prompt. How many pages are you supposed to write? If you get a 5-page paper as an assignment, well, Shakespeare's dramas is just going to be a little bit too broad. So make sure that the topic you choose fits the scope of your paper. Sometimes it can be really difficult to find a topic that is not too broad. Here are a couple of words of advice on what to do when your topic seems too broad. Let's say you are in an environmental science class. Your teacher gives you this assignment prompt. Write a research paper on a topic dealing with a current environmental issue. Your paper should not exceed 5 pages and should be based on a topic that strongly interests you. Well, you say, that's no problem. I know exactly what to write about. I saw the show the other day on TV, and it talked about the effects of deforestation on gorillas in Africa. I think that's a great topic. I know it interests me, and it's creative. So, let's write about it. Well, not so fast. Remember, your paper is only supposed to be 5 pages. How are you going to fit that topic into a 5-page paper? That's going to be difficult. So what could you do instead? The key is to add more context. For example, you could add some geographical context to your paper. Is there a geographic region or country in which gorillas are specifically affected by deforestation? Perhaps you want to focus more on a historical context. Is there a certain time aspect you want to write about? Perhaps the time when deforestation really started to affect gorillas. And third, with this topic, you could also add biological context. Perhaps there's a specific subspecies of the gorilla that you're interested to write about. So when we combine all three contexts and incorporate them into the original topic, this is what we get. Something like current effects of deforestation on the mountain gorilla in southwest Uganda. We thereby incorporate the historical context, the biological context, and the geographical context. Adding context truly is a great way of narrowing your topic.
Now let's come to the practice. I want you to use brainstorm, concept map, and funneling to identify your research topic. I give you some recommendation. You should start with some common broad topics in education, such as language learning. Think about 4 skills that you learn, or the learning strategy that you use. Or you can think about the way that the teacher teaches you. For example, teaching methodology. Also think about motivation, why you continue learning this course, or learning difficulties. So these topics can help you to start with the brainstorm, concept map, and funneling. Let's move to the second part, which is objectives and research questions. First, I will introduce you the hypothesis. Second, we look at the objectives. And the last one, let's see how can we establish the research questions. So what is hypothesis? Hypothesis, according to Oxford's dictionary, is a supposition or proposed explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point for further investigation. Hypothesis, according to another dictionary, they say that it's assumption made in order to draw out and test its logical and empirical consequences. So it means in Vietnamese is giả thuyết. So in research, hypotheses are statements in quantitative research in which the investigator make a prediction about the outcome of a relationship between attribution or characteristic. So when you want to do a research based on hypothesis, the result of the research will either support the hypothesis or will not support the hypothesis, or we say against. So hypotheses are normally start at the very beginning of the study and typically appear at the end of the introduction. So I will give you an example about hypothesis. So the topic is teachers' feedback on student essay and students' learning motivation. Hypothesis number 1 I can think of is students demotivate when receiving too much corrections from teacher. Hypothesis number 2 is students prefers feedback to score without comments. It means that you need to conduct a research and then see what is the preference of the student. So imagine that I conduct a research and the result is the research finding support the hypothesis 1 and reject the hypothesis 2. So you need to think about the objective. So objective is the thing that you want to do in your research. And writing your research objective clearly can help you to better define the focus of your study, clearly identify the variables to be measured, or you can actually think about the steps which are involved, establish the limit of the study, and also avoid collection of any data that is not necessary to your research. So there are 2 kinds of objectives. One, we call it general objectives. So general objective means what you expect to achieve in the general terms. For specific objectives, it means that you break down the general objectives into smaller, logical, and connected parts that systematically address the various aspects of the problems. So it helps you to specify what exactly you will do in each phases of your study, or they can help you to answer the question how, where, when, or for what purpose that you conduct this research. So I will give you some verbs that you can use to write your objective. I advise you to use some action verbs that's specific enough to be measured. For example, you say to compare, to calculate, to assess, to determine, to verify, to calculate, to describe, or to explain. You should not use some vague, non-active verb like to appreciate, to understand, to believe, to study. Do not use these verbs. Why? Why we need to use action verbs rather than non-active verbs? It's because that if you use non-active verbs, it is very, very hard for you to evaluate whether they have been achieved or not. So I want you to look at one example. So come back to the topic, writing anxieties of Vietnamese students when composing an English essay. So the general objectives can be, so I conduct this research to examine the writing anxieties of Vietnamese students when writing a written assignment at home and completing written tasks. So the specific objectives I can think of by breaking down the general objective is 1. To assess the level of writing anxiety experienced by Vietnamese university students. Object number 2, to identify the factors affecting students suffering from certain types of writing anxiety. Or I can actually give some recommendation of strategies to cope up with the writing anxiety. So you can see that the specific objectives are in more details compared to the general objectives. Now, let's move on to research questions. So research questions is questions that the researcher seeks to answer. So researchers typically develop them before identifying the methods of the research. There are some characteristics of research questions. Besides developing before the research identify the methods of the study, it can also use in both qualitative and quantitative research. And then there will be multiple research questions. And I recommend you to come up with at least 2 research questions so that you can fully explore the topic. So research questions play a single most important component of a study. Why? According to Borgen and Dodson in 2003, they say that the research questions have to identify the research unique contribution to the field. It also has to provide clear focus for the research process. It also influences the literature reviews and also influence how the researcher collect data or what kind of questions that they will ask. And last one, it can help the researcher think about how others will argue against the research that they are actually conduct right now. So, what should we do to find the research questions? First, you need to think about the research area and then select the aspect of research area, what you do in funneling, and then come up with the research questions and select the research question. So in one research, we should not exist more than 4 research questions, or else it won't be a lot. Now, I want you to see one example here. The research area is concerns about risk. So this is a very big term, concern about risk. So the researcher should choose on the aspect of the research area, maybe the variations in concerns about risk. In the next step, the researcher can develop many research questions, as you can see in the diagram, like what areas of risk are of greatest concern among people, or does concern about risk vary by age, gender, social class, or education? There can be many questions that can be raised, but the researcher cannot answer all of it. So to keep a clear focus of the study, the researcher decides to choose only some of the questions that he can answer. So they are: number 1, what areas of risk are of great concern among people? Second, does concern about risk vary by age, gender, social class, or education? And the third one, do parents tend to worry about risk more than non-parents? So now we move on to the criteria for assessing research questions. So how can we know this one is a good question or not so good one? First, the research question must be relevant. Relevant means it needs to be an issue covered by the research. Second, manageable. Manageable meaning it is within the scope. It means not too large, not too small. Also, it must be specific. Specific means that it can measurable or investigable. It must be clear and simple, so the reader, when they look at the research question, they can understand what you want to say. Interesting. The reader needs to find the research question interesting so that they can continue reading your research. And legitimate. It need to be a question, not a statement. Last one, it must be answerable. It means that after you do the research, you can answer the research questions. What question that is problematic? It starts with the phrase, how can I? It's like giving a suggestion, so it's not a good research question. Or the research question is a yes-no question, so you can just answer it yes or no. The question starts with should, it's not a good one. And also has some problem with the connection, and it includes some vague or ambiguous language. Now I want you to look at one video, and can you watch it and you can understand more about research questions.
A good research question is really like a lighthouse. It's essential to guide your research paper. It pinpoints exactly what you want to find out and gives your work a clear purpose and focus. Hi, I'm Jessica from Scribber, here to help you achieve your academic goals. Without further ado, here are 5 steps to develop a strong research question. Step 1. Choose a broad topic. Go with the topic that sparks your interest, since you'll be spending quite some time with it. For me, I'm thinking maybe something about social media. Step 2. Do some preliminary reading about the topic. Okay, so I've read a lot of newspaper writing about how social media negatively impacts high school students' academic performances, and they also happen to be one of the most active age groups on social media. Step 3. Narrow down to a specific niche. This way, you can make sure the research is within a feasible scope instead of something too broad to achieve in a given time frame. Since academic performance is too broad, let me narrow it down to attention span. Step 4. Identify a research problem. So we have already established that adolescents are one of the most active age groups on social media platforms, but only a scarce amount of research has been done on the effect of social media has on the younger generation's attention span. So this will be my research problem. Step 5. Write your research question. Turning your research problem into a question, and it sounds something like, what effect does daily use of Twitter have on the attention span of people in the age group of 16 to 20? Since this is a descriptive research, the research question is also descriptive, but there are also other kinds of research questions. It all depends on the type of research you'll do. For example, comparative research, descriptive research, or correlational research. Now we have a research question, but how do you know if it's good or not? Here's a checklist for you. A good research question should be focused. And focused it is, since it focuses on a single problem of Twitter's effect on the attention span of high school students. It should be researchable. That means the answer to your question can be found by collecting empirical data or through existing literature. In our case, we can go for a quantitative approach, like using eye tracking or mouse tracking to measure the attention span. It needs to be feasible. So is it doable within a certain time frame? Do you have access to the data you need or the right kind of respondents? It really depends on your situation. But for this research question, it will fit more into the time frame of a longer project, so it wouldn't be feasible for an assignment you have to hand in by the end of the month. Be specific. All the terms you use in the research question should have clear meanings. Notice how I don't use often, but daily? And instead of using adolescents, I use a specific age group. The research question should also be complex enough. If the research question can be answered with yes or no, or with easily found facts, then it's not complex enough. Last but not least, make sure a problem is relevant to your field of study or society. Well, social media is pretty much all we use now, so that's definitely relevant to society. It also targets a currently unanswered question and contribute knowledge that future research can build on. Now keep in mind, in a research paper or essay, you usually only write one research question. But for a bigger project, you can also develop multiple research questions around the same problem. For example, I can also ask, does the infinite scroll function on Twitter contribute to the effect on attention span? Follow the steps and checklist and you'll end up with the research question as a solid foundation for your research. Make sure you also check out our articles on writing the literature review and the methodology section. It's linked in the description. Good luck writing! I'll see you on our next video.
Let's come to a practice. So my practice is that there will be 4 research questions. All of them are not so good ones. I want you to identify the problems with these research questions based on the previous slide that I just presented. So let's come to the answer. So for the first research questions, how many students bring course book to the class? So for this question, it is not worth asking. It is not contribute to the field, so you should not have this one. Second, should students bring course book to the class every day? So the question starts with should, so it's not worth asking. Of course, the student should bring. 3, how is the use of English language different in the world? So you see that the population is in the world, so it's too large. So it's unanswerable. And the last one, do students sometimes going to the library have better academic performance than those who don't? This one, first, it's a yes-no question. It's not good. Second, it have vague language, which is the word sometimes. How can you judge the word sometimes? Once a week, twice a week, or 3 times a week? So let's come to the summary of today's lesson. So today, I just help you to look at the way to select the topic by looking at brainstorming, concept map, and funneling. And then we dig deep to objectives and research questions. We look at what does it mean by hypothesis, objectives, and research questions. Thank you so much for attending the Unit 2 and see you next time in Unit 3.